Myself and my husband actually met and talked to a few parents when we were doing our look-see, and he was really impressed with the very strong sense of community from everybody he spoke with.
When we're doing a lot of class projects and things that require us to work together in teams really early on, and I think that that's what is different from other schools.
I think this really prepares us for the world, because in the future there won't only be one way to look at something but dozens, and we need to learn to use all of these different methods.
We know that when a 5-year-old comes into school, they laugh a lot, they ask a lot of questions, they're curious, they're creative. An 8-year-old asks a few less questions, is a little bit less curious. A 14-year-old even less again. And it goes down, and it continues to go down all the way through our life until we retire. It goes up again. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the children coming out of grade 12 are as curious as the children coming in at 5 years of age, have the same sense of wonder about the world and the same creativity? And this research has been repeated all over the world, that there's a drop in creativity of children as they go through schools. So I do believe a new paradigm is needed in education. A paradigm that does the opposite of a traditional school, that takes the differences that children are born with and enhances the multiple human talents that we have. Every child has this gift to the world, and as a school we need to unwrap this gift that they have. So it is that I believe we need a vision, and we've been working with the community to draft a vision, and that does the following. It ensures that our students are prepared for this world that will be very different. A vision that ensures that we can attract the very best teachers from around the world. And a vision that ensures our children go on to have a positive impact on the world. Getting them to university is easy. It's what they do after that that will become important in terms of their lifelong learning and their contribution as a global citizen. So our vision is leading innovation in learning for a better world. To remain and to continue to be a leader in innovation so that our students will have a positive impact on our world. To ensure we do deliver and we provide an outstanding international education. How do we plan on doing this? We have 3 ideas, 3 strands, if you like, for the way we may move forward on this. The first one is to do with the teaching and learning. It's to foster a collaborative community that celebrates diversity, service, innovation, and lifelong learning by providing the individual support to meet the personal needs of every ISD student. That means if they need to get top grades to get into the best medical school in the world, we should support them in doing that. It means if they are struggling with learning, that we support that child. It means affording an education that promotes collaboration and inspires innovation and creativity. It means developing authentic learning experiences that allow students to follow their passion and their interest. What Ken Robinson says, when you combine someone's passion and talents, they're in what he calls the element, and he wrote a book on it. And nurture students to be confident and caring global citizens who know how to learn in multiple ways. And we're currently looking at this and what this might mean and how we may achieve this. The second strategy is about the learning spaces required to support the first strand of the vision. How will the learning spaces actually impact and support what we're trying to achieve? And so our second strategy is to transform teaching and learning by creating environments of excellence that exploit the use of place, time, and technology in innovative ways. Create learning communities with flexible learning spaces that foster collaboration and innovation. Develop environments that excite the mind, stimulates creativity, and promotes learning. And promote and support teaching and learning strategies that utilize space in transformational ways. And largely tonight is about the second strategy and the first strategy. The third strategy is about developing an Institute of Innovation, which is a platform to share many of the ideas that we have at ISD. If we are a leading school, then we have an obligation to reach out to the community, not to be a bubble as an international school in Germany, but to reach out to local schools, to other schools in Germany, other schools in Europe, and to develop an Institute of Innovation to build ideas through research and teacher development, to monitor the best practices, explore and generate ideas, and place our teachers at the forefront of international education.
All the neuroscience on happiness actually shows that real sustained happiness comes from two things. One is purpose, and the other is engagement. So kids who are engaged in something that they find meaningful to themselves and in their lives is what will give them sustained happiness, as opposed to us sort of trying to engineer their happiness by creating a life for them that we think will make them happy. It's something that has to come from within. So this is something that's kind of driven our practice all along, to see how we can create environments, schools, that will result in kids having a sense of purpose, and where they will be naturally want to be engaged, which is this notion of intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. Now, the neuroscience tells us that students will learn better when they don't feel they are being forced to learn. I mean, it's kind of, I'm sure the same is true for adults. But that doesn't mean that they are against hierarchies. It doesn't mean that they are against being told what to do, because a student will almost intuitively want to be part of being better. Let's, for example, they want to learn soccer or taekwondo or something. They're willing to subject themselves to pretty difficult process and be very rigorous in their training from a master at that craft, because they want to get good at it. I mean, they're naturally inclined to want to be really good at what they do. They want to develop mastery, and they're willing to subject themselves to that because they feel they have choice, right? They feel they want to be a good soccer player. They want to be a good taekwondo master. But so it's the basic difference in whether or not they intrinsically want to do it, or they're doing it to satisfy us as adults. So sometimes it's a simple thing of how schools set themselves up to give students the choice to. So I asked a question to Simon: how many students would come to school here if they didn't have to? Like, if the choice was, got up in the morning, you can stay at home or you can go to school. Now, there are many students here who would say, I'd like to go to school because it's a more fun place to be than home. Now, to me, those students are here by choice, and they will learn because even though the teacher is telling them what to do, the being here itself was a choice that they made consciously. And therefore, whatever they're learning here is not something that they are being forced to do. So that's the difference. The key difference is how students perceive that. So if they perceive they have choice, they are far more likely to be a good learner than those who feel that they're doing it simply to please the adults or because they have to do it. So the whole notion of learning has become completely turned on its head. But school or schooling continues to improve, but at a very marginal rate. So what's happening is that the relevance between schooling and learning continues to grow, because 20 years ago, we could make a very strong argument that the reason you're going to school is so you can learn, right? It's going to be harder and harder for us to convince our kids that that's why they're going to school, because you can learn pretty much anywhere, any time. Now we hear from Harvard that they're actively seeking students who are unschooled or homeschooled, because these kids bring a special kind of creativity to the Harvard campus that kids who go to traditional schools are unable to bring, because they are kids who are essentially thinking for themselves as opposed to being told what to do. The other problem, of course, in schooling is that younger kids, exactly as Simon pointed out, tend to come to school with all the leadership qualities needed to be a good 21st century learner, right? They're curious, they're motivated, they're gregarious, they challenge authority, they challenge convention, they laugh a lot, they are willing to take risks. All of the characteristics that you need to be a leader. But schooling tends to educate those qualities out of them. So, and we are trying to, schooling tends to make them more uniform, and then the measures of success become much narrower, right? So that's one of the reasons why, as I said, these top universities are realizing that schools are less likely to produce a type of students they want than people who don't go to school even. So essentially the point is that this relevance gap continues to grow and will continue to grow. So a school like ISD has the opportunity to at least close that gap. I don't think any school in the world will ever completely have this sort of total carte blanche freedom to match that learning curve. But you certainly have the opportunity to be a leader, to say that, well, if my kids are going to spend X number of hours on campus, let them at least do something that's far more productive than they might have done if they were sitting at home, as an example, right? So I think that is definitely a possibility. And from what we've seen of your campus, we think that you're doing a lot of that already. And so this isn't a stretch to say that you can now push the envelope even farther. Some really, really amazing pictures. I like the outdoor learning stuff that you have here. That's as good as anything I've seen anywhere in the world. So that's really something wonderful that that you have, given the fact that you have a pretty tight campus, that you are able to make really, really good use of it. So you can see from those pictures that this is not a traditional school in that sense. It definitely feels more holistic and seems to be about the whole child and not just about pure academics, And so I think that's a very encouraging sign, but you can still take that thinking even further. So basically what we are saying is that if you look at the difference between a 20th and 21st century school and the school building, you have this sort of black line that you see drawn all the way here. And the reason for that black line is because each of these bars is a spectrum, we call it. So in other words, if you look at teachers can either teach individually or they can teach as a team, right? These are the two ends of the spectrum. If you think about pedagogy, that is how you teach, you can either have teacher-directed, which is what I'm doing, right, where you are just passive, or you can have student-directed, where students are doing all the work and the teacher is basically on the sidelines, being a guide. When it comes to curriculum, you can be either isolated, where teaching math and English and history and social studies separately, or where it's all integrated, in the way real life is. In the real life, you don't encounter history without context, without understanding everything else that happened around it. So basically what we are saying is that if you go down the line, the last thing, as Simon also pointed out, is promote uniform opportunity for all students versus knowing that every student is unique and different, and promote unique individualized opportunities. But what we are saying is that during the course of any typical school day, a teacher might in some cases be lecturing like I'm doing, or the teacher might be on the sidelines and the students might be doing all the work, right? Or the teacher might be working independently, or the teacher may be working in a team. But what we are saying is that the traditional school building, and in some parts of your building as well, physically prevent teachers from moving down that spectrum. Just as an example, let's say that we want to create an interdisciplinary team of teachers in your school. It will be very difficult to do because they're all trapped in different parts of the building. So what we're saying is that in a traditional building, the student-teacher ratio is fixed. And by fixing it, you're making it almost impossible for the teacher to personalize learning. Because how can one teacher personalize learning for 15 kids? It's impossible. Whereas under the model that we are talking about, with a variety of spaces where the teachers are working as a team, you can actually vary the teacher-student ratio as a constant throughout the course of the day, so that you have exactly the number of teachers that are actually needed for the learning activity. So it's not held hostage to the building.
Many of you probably are familiar with this school. In this opening area, when you walk into the building, you have a gathering stair it's big enough to bring the whole school together for presentation, for community building, for a greater sense of developing who they are as a group. They were driven by some principles of the Common Ground curriculum, which is now being developed by actually Kevin Bartlett, who's the head of this school. Personal meaning, well-being, sustainability, environmental connections, creativity, problem-solving, communication, and group membership were really big drivers in how these spaces were developed. The idea that a well-rounded learning experience has a connection, a collaborative component, it has a independent component, and a active component, a hands-on, interdisciplinary, product-focused element. You know, in education right now, we hear a lot about the importance of collaboration. It's certainly important. But the research actually tells us that we need to balance that with plenty of opportunities for individual, quiet, reflective work. That's where we really produce. So while the ideation and the exchange of ideas might happen in collaboration, it's the processing and quiet, reflective settings that really allows us to have those understandings take a deeper level with our knowledge. There's a lot of research out that talks about how it's important to be able to gaze into distances beyond 50 meters, and especially if you can gaze into greenery. It has an impact on learning and achievement, mainly related to the rest that it gives the mind when you're able to do that. Lots of these, you'll see in the school, a lot of garage doors that actually just whip up and make an easy, quick connection to a commons area where students are able to break out. So a teacher has at his or her disposal a variety of areas beyond what's just available in four walls, which is sometimes limiting. In this school, there are no corridors. In fact, most schools use about 15 to 25% of their total volume of space in just the movement of people, egress. It's lost to learning. That's a lot of space and a lot of cost and a lot of lost opportunity. So we're really trying to do away with that notion of corridors, which we heard from students today are rather congested and difficult sometimes to move. And in fact, one student felt a little dangerous actually, moving up and down the stairs all at passing time. So trying to make a little more comfort come out of this.
Confidence.
We also think that piloting will be a good idea.
What do we need to do, or what needs to change in the method of teaching?
Flexible spaces is going to would increase the collaboration.
Right, and I could be using my resources somewhere else in that space with others while they were just feeding off of each other.
I really believe in the role of a teacher and just inspiring you and giving you, like, I don't know, a sense of passion in what you want to learn.
And we were very impressed with first graders, the way they weren't sitting around facing the class board at the top of the class. And we're very impressed with the holistic approach.
Where we are at the very, very beginnings of getting that process started.
Well, we'll hopefully see you in the near future. So you keep going here. So.
Thank you.
Cheers.